Thank you very much for joining for this breakout session number 1. I'm happy to see that our panel is already seated here, so please enjoy this next panel discussion.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Viktor Varjú, and I'm a research fellow at the Institute for Regional Studies in Pécs, southwest of Hungary, one of the lag-behind regions in Hungary and in the EU. And I'm also a sociologist and a geographer, and I'm really happy to chair this session about new challenges, new dimensions, and regional disparities. So actually, you can read the introductory remarks of this session in the program. I just would like to emphasize some issues that we would like to talk about, the dynamical challenges we have to face, and we're focusing on how to bridge the gaps that cause regional disparities in order to reduce the disparities. So we are talking about, or we will talking about also how to use new technologies and the key actors to innovate regions. But on the other hand, we would like to also focus on the other part, I mean the lagged behind regions, how we can help, or how key actors and how AI, for instance, can help in this sense. So as we were discussing beforehand, preparing for this session, Professor Calzada told me that actually there are two key points that we would like to, how we can summarize this issue. I just try to tell you that we should focusing on inclusiveness and also taking into consideration the pluralism to approach these very, very, very complex problems. That's why we have colleagues from very different areas. But too much words from my side, so let me introduce the panelists here. First, Joanna Kubiak, Wielkopolska, Voivodeship Brussels office, EU affairs professional working across the fields of R&I and regional policy and programs, acting director of the Wielkopolska region Brussels office, responsible for steering regions' engagement towards the EU institutions and other key partners. A network person passionate about engaging regional stakeholders at the European level and supporting the innovation ecosystem. Member of Management Board of the European Regions Research and Innovation Network, and co-leader of its Smart Specialization Working Group, coordinator of the Polish delegation to the European Committee of the Regions, and advocate of place-based policy, interested in environmental sustainability, in the issue of bridging the innovation divided in Europe. Also, we have Silvia Gomez Recio, sorry if I'm my pronunciation, is the first Secretary General of YERUN since October 2016, when the network opened its Brussels office. She's responsible for strategic leadership, networking actions, and implementation of network strategy and objectives. Various are the groups that the network has established among its members to support and exchange best practice sharing, one of them being dedicated to the contribution of YERUN universities to the Sustainable Development Goals. This YERUN, or the Young European Research University Network, is a group of like-minded young research universities in Europe that strengthens and facilitates cooperation in the areas of research, education, and services which benefit society. She's leading a network of young research universities, so actually we are really interested about her thoughts from the university's point of view. And actually, she's also originating, coming from the Extremadura region, one of the like behind regions. Okay, Wolfgang Münch is a senior expert in the European Commission's Directorate General for Regional and Urban Policy. His unit coordinates investments of cohesion policy in the areas of smart and sustainable growth. He had several assignments in European Commission, including for cohesion policy in Poland, Italy, and Malta, as well as in the field of policy development in agricultural policy. And last but not least, we have Professor Igor Calzada, University of the Basque Country, and Ikerbasque and Cardiff University, full professor in social science and humanities, and established researchers, principal investigator in Ikerbasque at the University of Basque Country, Public Policy and Economic History Department, as well as at Cardiff University, and he worked in lots of very well-recognized places with Fulbright School in California, also Decentralization Research Center in Canada, also senior scientists at University of Oxford, and also worked for GRC, UN Habitat. And his main expertise is smart city citizenships, regional innovations, and the artificial intelligence and its regional perspective, and the role of social innovation approach. So after this introduction, I'll have a so long question and the introduction to this question. Actually, we have heard about a lot, not a lot about the Green Deal, but a lot about the Draghi reports. And now I'd like to focus on a little bit that the Draghi report, among others, highlights that the EU has to focus on innovation using new technologies. And also, our panel is focusing on that, but also on how to reduce the territorial disparities with artificial intelligence, but not only with artificial intelligence, but the key actors as well. So my first question is to Joanna, because she's coming from Wielkopolska voivodeship, one of the biggest Polish regions, located between the capital region and the border region, transition region in cohesion policy terms, rated as emerging innovator plus in the regional innovation scoreboard. And Eastern Wielkopolska is one of the just transition territories in Poland. So what Wielkopolska region can teach us in this transition?
Thanks so much. So yeah, we do take the green transition very seriously in Wielkopolska, as we have seen, as much as many other regions, already signs of climate change for quite some time. And the best example of it is the area of Eastern Wielkopolska, where we still have lignite mine that are being phased out at the moment, and when the just transition process is underway. So we have designed and implemented the Just Transition territorial plan that sets out three areas of action. First is development of a climate neutral economy. Second is ensuring quality landscape, and that includes also regeneration of degraded post-mining areas. And then the third one concerns active citizens. So basically, it's to support the process from the social perspective, but also include citizens in the process. To give the strategic framework for the whole thing, we've also developed a climate neutrality strategy that has a main goal of climate neutrality for this part of the region by 2030. So we just have around 15 years to go. And it also includes three areas, three specific goals, and this is reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, increasing the use use of renewable resources and increasing energy efficiency in construction, transport, and industry. And then to streamline this, this process, we're implementing a live program strategic project that's called Life After Coal. And that project supports the implementation of these 3 climate neutrality goals, but also provides the governance system, the monitoring system, and cooperation networks to actually streamline and to implement the strategy and the whole process. And most of all, it includes a lot of stakeholders. And you've already mentioned this inclusiveness. So we have 33 partners, and this is public institutions, but you also have local communities, you have businesses, and you have NGOs that are involved in this process. And then the second part is development of hydrogen ecosystem in Wielkopolska, and we actually are the first Polish region that has adopted hydrogen strategy. To also provide a strategic framework for the process. And then we've heard already this morning a couple of times about regional innovation valleys, and Wielkopolska has also been selected as one of the valleys, and the topic that we have chosen, the area was reducing reliance on fossil fuels. And that's one part, that's the green transition part, but we also have a second priority area that was also considered for the REITs, for the regional innovation valleys, and that's mastering digital transformation. So the second issue that you've mentioned. So this is something that we were trying to develop our regional brand around. We have a strong ICT system. This was one of the smart specialization area that has actually been one of our smart specialization areas from the beginning. And we have qualified people around it. And what I hear from them is that if you are developing AI or other new technologies, you can do it from wherever you live. So basically, these are people that live locally but work globally. And from this point of view, it is very inclusive. But as we know, new technologies also could be very exclusive in the sense that they developed very fast, and sometimes they also demand a big amount of money. So that's why it's important to stay in the game. And that's why we're trying to be active in this sector and to support our businesses, but also the whole regional innovation ecosystem to make sure that everyone works together, because that's how we can progress most. And this ecosystem is based, when it comes to new technologies, is based on strong research centers. So we have 2 AI research centers that are based at 2 big universities, but also other centers. And we, for example, host one of first 6 EU quantum computers in the EU.
Thank you very much. What is really interesting for me, at least, that how to activate citizens and stakeholders, because this is really, really challenging. And maybe you would like to just reply now, or.
So in the just transition process, that was something that was designed from the very beginning. We realized, because we're closing the mines and because a lot of people would lose their jobs as a consequence and would have to be requalified, we realized very, very fast at the process that this is the key thing that we have to focus on, because it's related to very jobs. It's something that supports very family. A lot of mining families depend on support from one person, that is basically miners, and miners do earn quite well. So we know that this is important to involve all the employees and also to restructure the whole job market, but also the industry that this area was mainly focused on. So that's why we decided that involving everyone, all the sectors, would be something that we would have to do to really start off well and to be able to deliver.
Okay, thank you. The next question is to Wolfgang Münch. The ninth cohesion report explores the role of artificial intelligence and smart technologies in the development of the European Union's regions. The report highlights that the digital transition, including the use of AI and smart technologies, is essential for regional competitiveness and economic growth. It also underscores that the spread of digital technologies can help reduce regional disparities. How do you see this? How the spread of digital technologies can help to reduce regional disparities? Do you have any example, for instance, from your experience from Poland, Malta, or Italy?
Well, Viktor, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Well, that's quite a big question. Digitalization is something. It's a transversal area, because it's not that you support digitalization as such, but it is in every investment an enterprise does. There is nowadays a digitalization component. You buy a new machine, of course there is some digital technology in there. So digitalization from a regional development perspective is a broad subject, because you have first the enterprises as mentioned, but you also have the public sector, and then you have the people, and all the interfaces between these three, which is covered by digitalization. And it's true, digitalization also has something to do with capacity, with the capacity to communicate, to get close to markets for enterprises, but also to communicate between, let's say, enterprises and public administration, or between people and public administration, providing essential services, healthcare, for example, in remote areas. That's something digitalization can do. So it's quite a broad subject. For me, as somebody who is to implement funding, meaning making sure that at a certain moment investments are done, digitalization has something to do with capacity. And because I remember times when first this came up, and what did our managing authorities do? Well, digitalization of enterprise, oh, we give out vouchers so every enterprise can make a website. Or digitalization for administration means, we buy now some computers and install them. But this is not what digitalization is. Digitalization has a lot to do with administrative reform, because there you can see what kind of procedures do you have, how you can streamline, and how you can make it quicker and better. The same holds for enterprises. So, and for people. So for me, it is a tool for capacity. And if I may, a good example is tiny Malta. Malta has, well, it's small, 450,000 inhabitants, has this country spread over 3 islands, one of them uninhabited, but a nice place, but with a very, very efficient public administration. And a good part of that is digitalization. There are other examples which are a bit to the contrary, which came during the Corona crisis, where when you have administrations, particularly local ones, and that was a problem with Italy, where 80% of all procedures in a commune was still on paper. Can you imagine what happens in Corona when nobody is in the offices? So nothing moved forward. So this is something where digitalization has really something to do with really moving things forward. I can also take an example out of my home country where we still work with fax machines for whatever reasons. So this is another of these kind of deficiencies which we need to address. So what we want is quicker investments. We want for the enterprises a better doing business conditions, and which has a lot to do with communication between enterprises and public administrations. And if you do this electronically and you streamline procedures, you are really, really fast with decisions, because enterprises need decisions on building permits and whatever it is, faster than we are today. So, your question. Yes, if regions really invest sensibly in digital technologies and apply them, this is really giving them a big boost and likely to reduce regional disparities.
Okay, thank you very much. And Silvia, how universities can contribute to this whole issues and very difficult problems?
Thank you very much. I think it's a bit too high. Well, first of all, I wanted to give you a bit of context of the network YERUN and what we mean by a young university, because it can give a better understanding to the audience, at least to understand the examples that I will bring forward. So YERUN is a small network. We have 23 members, young research universities in 17 countries. We lack some representation in Eastern Europe, precisely. We can then discuss maybe why we have that. And they came together because they are smaller, medium-sized universities that were established after the 60s. So almost in all of our universities, there was this origin of need to create something, to develop an area, to increase or specialize the workforce, to develop new industries. So they have very good connections and they are very rooted in their regional or local areas. Not all of our universities are in a region, some of them are also in capitals, but they don't tend to be in the city center, they tend to be maybe in the outskirts of the city. So that connection of a university or a higher education institution that does things in connection with the local actors of the region is very present in our universities. So maybe indeed it's not, let's say we are biased on the positive side because they found that need to make sure that they were showing the added value because they were created for that. It's not that there were universities that were there and then they had to explain how they were contributing to the regions. So what we see, we were collecting a lot of examples for this talk, but I found it was also difficult to have to go over all of them because there are 23. But I invite you, if you can check on our website and get subscribed, we will have a newsletter dedicated precisely to the role that our universities are doing in regions, and you will be able to dig into some of the examples that I will present today. So we have identified, if I can group how we see the contribution of the universities in the region, we see 4 main areas, and they are very connected to what Joanna was saying as well. The first one is a majority of our universities have turned their strategies for sustainable development and the green transition. And this is, we have example from Tromsø, that's in the Arctic, University of Norway. In Denmark, we have also in Limerick, in other areas of Ireland, but we have also universities in the peninsula, so in Lisbon, in Nova. And what they have done is creating centers for sustainable transitions to develop climate neutrality projects, but they are also integrating education into the research and innovation and the students, for students and researchers. We have a selection that we did in 2020, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, 2023, no, 2021. It was a compilation, it was just after COVID, of how our universities are integrating sustainable development in the education of the students to make them more conscious citizens in the future. And in terms of research, we are also organizing an upcoming event, a winter school, for researchers to better connect how they translate their research into impacts on sustainable development. So how can we make the connection and how we ensure that researchers are able to explain what is the contribution that their research has towards the different sustainable development goals. Also, another aspect that they work, and that I think connects very much with Joanna, is the sense of community partnership and civic engagement. So that idea of creating, making sure that universities are not only working or developing degrees and people, a workforce that will go away, but also to make them understand how they can have a real value in understanding what are the regional needs and the social inequalities that may happen, how they can address vulnerable population, how they can adapt their concepts and their theories to these local needs. We also see that in an initiative that you may have heard about, that is a European University Initiative, where we have many different alliances of universities. Many of them are actually connected to this civic engagement. And then the third one that I would like to mention is maybe another one that has been well presented in terms of the tech transfer. So how universities become the regional innovation hubs. How they create, first of all, how they create the connections with the different stakeholders and the different sectors, how they give their infrastructure or how they put their infrastructure at the disposal of many other players, including also SMEs, smaller companies that cannot invest in these things, how they connect researchers to the needs of these companies and establish these connections. And that's maybe one of the key areas where, when Draghi is mentioning, we have a lack of translation of our research outputs into other areas. That's one of the key aspects, having these kind of innovation ecosystems working well. And I would like to mention a last one that I find is very interesting, and is how we are seeing the need to start doing more, not interdisciplinary research, not even collaboration with different sectors, but the transdisciplinary research, where we are really actively doing research with other sectors. That's not always streamlined in all universities, but is the understanding that our research is not only done by our researchers, but with the real input from other sectors. And that creates and requires a lot of cultural change, also in the mindset of the governance of our institutions, but also in the way in which we evaluate and the indicators that we are using to evaluate the performance of these institutions. And this is something we can go maybe later on in detail, but I would say these are like the four main things that our universities are doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now to turn to the new technologies and the role of new technologies, the AI. How would you extend this topic? How this topic can influence the reducing to reduce regional disparities? How do you see this?
Okay. Do you want me to show the slides or maybe later? Okay, in the meantime, we can put it properly. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for organizers for inviting me here. I think after just listening to the other panelists, the question was just asked in a very positive manner in terms of how AI could just reduce regional disparities. I have some slides. I don't know if it's possible to use them, because I would like to frame a little bit what I'm going to say before being a bit clumsy with my statements. So if you can just put it, because I think it's relevant for me at least to, okay, probably is there. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Okay, just quickly, that was mainly the question of the panel, and you know how AI could reduce or exacerbate regional disparities. And first and foremost, after Professor Ron Boschna's great keynote this morning, I believe that I wanted to frame, I'm not going to do a research presentation here, but that the frame is clearly the EU policy framework that is the new released Draghi report, talking and endorsing sustainable and resilience economic competitiveness. We are talking about this at the end of the day, but I think that we cannot forget about the AI Act, underscoring different levels of risks, which is not happening in other places around the world. So having said that, and probably I'm going to start now answering this very thick and difficult question, with my humble research experience, this summer, in September, I directed a summer school with a, let's say, provocative title, saying something like "Beyond the Noise of Algorithms." If I might just make a little amendment to your concept, your concept of digitalization, I think that we are not in the digitalization era. We are in the datafication era, which is a big distinction. I think that the key thing is not whether we are going to transform a paper in a bit in this iPhone. It's going to be like much more about who is going to control the data that we are using in our daily life. And I think it's very much related to Draghi report and also to AI Act, because something that is missing, at least not at the research level, but in the policy context like here, is very simple idea. It's why, sorry if there are some experts in AI, probably in the coffee break or lunch time we can discuss about this, but AI is fed by data. And we are forgetting about this all the time. We are talking about AI in a very abstract manner, and AI is pretty much OpenAI, ChatGPT, are pretty much doing the same that Web 2.0 made. I mean, being fed by our clicks, or the way that we browse. So with this summer school, what we like to do is how AI could be used in order to reduce regional and, let's say, social disparities in Europe. So beyond going in depth, because there are two papers that you can check that, you have the QR code on the left on the papers. We mentioned the importance of generative AI, because we are talking generically about AI, artificial intelligence, but in the morning nobody mentioned, for example, well, wrong. Somebody mentioned generative AI, but nobody mentioned urban AI. And I believe that in this conference, we need to start already thinking that cities like Budapest, for instance, I visited since Saturday, public transport is great, is amazing, very good one. And I was thinking that, wow, that could be a good way to test a local AI. And what do I mean with local AI? AI that could be managed and storage at very local level. And AI localism is a trend that, for example, New York University is developing for at least more than 5 years. So I'm not talking about something new. So it's something that the US, they are doing that. So going beyond that, what I'm trying to claim, my brief answer to your question, I think that we need to start embracing decentralized models of data that could just affect, obviously, the decentralization of AI in itself. This is something, that framework that we developed in the summer school, mainly with more buzzwords. I accept that there are more buzzwords, because beyond, inside of blockchain, we can have the dysfunction of Bitcoin, for instance. I'm not talking about blockchain in this sense. I'm talking about blockchain as an architecture that could allow somehow to control privacy of data, that is under the GDPR and is also underlined in the AI Act. So what I'm trying to claim with my presentation is that we need to start also experimenting with another kind of data governance models that probably is going to affect entirely the way in which we are going to play the European AI implementations. And just to finish with your presentation, with your question, and to give some insights that they are realistic, what I'm trying to say, what I'm saying. I'm working this week, for instance, with the BME Faculty of Computer Science in an Horizon Europe project that is called Enfield, and we are mainly working in this hypothesis, in embracing decentralized AI, in order to provide some idea about how trustworthy AI could be implemented. So we call the Leveraging Generative AI for Democracy And we are testing, and this is my last slide, the last one, 7 specific techniques that could be used, for example, to avoid deepfakes and bias in the algorithmic implementation. But again, we are not just testing AI as such. We are going at the beginning of the process, that is how data is feeding AI. So I wanted to just to highlight this fact. One, I'm not talking about digitalization. I think we need to start talking about datafication and how the European regions and cities, they can already, under the policy framework, they can already govern their own data, and then that could be a way. I'm not saying that it's going to be a direct way, but it's going to be a way to at least to control and to have a European branded AI. That would be my answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to react to each other?
I think it's extremely important, the aspect indeed on what are we measuring. And part of the activities in which we are engaging as a network is the reform of research assessment, how we are using new indicators to evaluate the performance of research and innovation. And that's something crucial. We are advancing, but this is something that we will need to continue working on in the next decade. And we have now this system where we are looking into number of patents, number of publications, and based on that we are measuring the performance of our regions, countries, institutions, and researchers. But we are realizing that this is incredibly lacking the possibilities to capture the role that we are doing more in the locality, so in the specific needs, because it tends to be a system that tries to generalize our input and is not taking into consideration many aspects of social innovation. So I think that's it's crucial to see how indeed, and I found Igor is fantastic that you've put the emphasis on that, because we are having indeed systems that are giving us also wrong assumptions, and that are failing to recognize the importance of the authenticity of many of the work that we are doing in the local aspects. You mentioned, Joanna, working locally but with a global mindset, and I think that's exactly what it is. But in the systems, indeed, and the data that we are using, they are actually trying to see how we can compare with each other. And maybe we cannot compare with each other so simplistically as we have. And that's something that I think it's important also to consider when moving forward.
Okay, thank you. If you don't want to reflect, I'm just going to the next question. Actually, my next question would focus on the inclusiveness, but you mentioned also conscious citizens, stakeholder involvement, capacity building, locality, social innovations, so those that are really important in that part. And actually we have short in time, so just going toward the so-called third question, and then to open the floor for the audience for questions. So still remaining disparities and regional disparities, and also as I'm a researcher, I'm really curious how the different researchers with different belongings, I would say, can achieve innovations or can contribute to innovations. So actually we had a Horizon Europe project called SSH Center, and the research results, this project is focusing on Southern European researchers and academics, and also Central and Eastern European researchers, and comparing them or compared to Western and Nordic countries, we found that they are really in backward situation due to precariat positions, for instance, or with hierarchical governance structure, different scientific or research culture compared to the Western and Nordic cultures, I would say the Anglo-Saxon hegemony. So we can see here kind of disparities as well. And actually, nowadays, EU has several tools to positively discriminate these academics and these institutions. However, the research foci are still designed for Western Nordic countries. I would say that if you can have a look at on the Horizon Europe course, you can find lots of course focusing on urban disparities and urban inequalities, but hardly find any course focusing on the rural regions, lagged behind rural regions. So my question is that about rural, how do you see this? Do you agree with this experience or the role of these lagged behind Central European and Southern universities and academics, or you don't see this as a problem?
Difficult question. Well, I'm going to be a bit positive with your criticism to this. I believe that a little framing on how the data-driven society, European society and economy can allow somehow the collaboration between either urban or rural regions in Europe. I cannot think about any difficulties to make connection between cities. We have seen that in Horizon 2020. There are a lot of lighthouse projects in which many cities in Turkey, in Germany, in very different diverse countries, they've been collaborating with each other. So I believe that at the moment, I mean, despite the fact that probably my presentation was a bit not negative, skeptic, critical, but right now is the constructive part. And I believe that regions can very much collaborate regardless of their position in Europe. I think this is a strength in itself. So I cannot foresee, and Phil, for example, is one of the projects I joined recently, but the leader is a Norwegian university, the Budapest Economics and Technology, University of Technology and Economics is part of that. There's a university in Spain, in Madrid. I mean, there are 26 partners. So, well, and regarding your question about the rural and the urban, I think that the regional studies has studied quite a lot these disparities, you know. And if you check, for example, the good practices or the best in class, we know that those that they have developed the city regional strategies, I mean, those that they are connecting the rural and the cities and the hubs, are those being successful? I mean, and we have cases as well in Europe in which we can learn from. So probably the disparities in some countries are higher than others, but I would just embrace the concept of the city regions. I mean, I did my PhD in Oregon, in Portland, Oregon, in the US, probably the best case on that, but there are more cases as well. So I wouldn't be that, in my humble opinion, my humble perspective, I wouldn't be that critical on that.
I totally agree with Igor that it's important to collaborate and that we do have this opportunity to collaborate all over Europe and even beyond. However, there is still this innovation divide, and that reflects also the participation of different countries, of different regions in, for example, Horizon Europe program. And we've heard today in the morning from the Deputy Director General from the European Commission that European divide is still one of the big challenges when it comes to R&I in Europe. Taking the example of my region, so we are a transition region in cohesion terms, so we've really made a big steps over the last 20 years that we've been a part of the EU. However, when we look at the research and innovation side, we really have a lot of work to do. We're an emerging innovator with a small plus next to it, and our Horizon Europe participation rate is not what we would like to see. We'd really like it to be more. I think that these tools of geographical balance in project and just widening sub-programs are very important to actually help to raise this participation rate and help to really get this innovation RNI, not only innovation but RNI potential to the surface, because the excellence is there. We always say that Horizon is about excellence. I wouldn't say that there's no excellence in Central and Eastern Europe. It's definitely there, but there are other barriers that make our ecosystems, our universities, make it a little bit more difficult to participate in the European programs, and also have worse results when it comes to the RNI performance in general. So there is, I think, some work that has to be done on the EU side, but some work that also has to be done on the national side, on the regional side. We have to understand and we have to remember that investing in research, this is a long-term process. These are long-term investments. There is also national investment and national reforms needed, but we definitely need support from the EU programs to make them more inclusive. Thanks.
Well, yes, I can't agree more. There is excellence all over in Europe, but we can't deny, of course, that that certain regions have a less vivid ecosystem than others. And your region, Joanna, is a good example. I mean, I saw it some years ago. Developing, it is hard work. You need to invest in the basics, like bringing your universities up to standard, bringing research institutions there which are relevant. And the biggest part is the cooperation between public research and the private sector. I remember I was in a project with the World Bank, also in Poland, where we tried to make an example how to construct a technology transfer office that was in Rzeszów. And it was a technical university, and I assumed in my naivety that there is a vivid collaboration with the local ecosystem. No, there was not. And it took us, together with a lot of experts, because we wanted to make it a pilot, to see what needs to be done that this technology transfer office is working. And there were a lot of institutional barriers to go, also mentality barriers. For example, that, well, research is about publishing articles. It's not about patents, for example. And if a bright student has a patent, well, then usually there was little where they could go further. Find somebody, find a business that's interesting, found a business, and so on, though everything is in place. So I think the story is not so much about discrimination here. It's about being able and being competitive. Networking helps, absolutely. And this is something which is there. But don't forget that only 3% of Horizon funding goes to emerging innovators. 3%. While our money is 75%. And our money is not the excellence. It is about building up the ecosystem. And this needs to be done. And I think here, cooperation is very, very important. And it's taking a while, because it's about rethinking the approaches and putting the necessary elements in place. So that's a bit the thing. There's hard work and there's positive discrimination. And if the two comes together, then something can be achieved.
Very much in agreement as well with what you have mentioned, Wolfgang. There is, inevitably there is success attracts success. Those that are already successful with some companies, then they will have more projects with other companies and institutions that start attracting more funding, will continue attracting funding. And this is something that we were discussing also in the lunch break, that the areas that they are already high innovators in the end attract all the resources and attention from other areas as well. So there, indeed, that's kind of the positive discrimination that we need to make sure that politicians also pay attention to how to distribute these resources. There is, in many I think the discussions are going very much into reforming in the future also the widening participation measures, because what we are seeing is that there are also a lot of disparities within the regions of widening countries, or also within regions of countries that are not part of the widening, because in the end, the extra resources that were given maybe to a capital in a widening country are then creating that effect of replicating more success, while other areas connected to that are, let's say, not well coordinated. So maybe looking in the future, what we are seeing is that we are still lacking a meaningful dialogue on the local needs and more engagement with the stakeholders, not only at European level, as we are having now with dialogues that we have with the Commission, but also with the member states, but really at the local level to understand what would be really make a different impact. That on the one hand, to create really policy, we need to have more coordination into the work that we're doing all together, but that has to reflect the local needs. Otherwise, we will not be able to streamline the work that each of the regions and each of the stakeholders have to do as well, each of the part of the sector. And the second part would be we need a wider understanding of what impact is, and we are still too narrow. Wolfgang, you mentioned publications, but also publications and patent are still narrow, and we need to become more holistic about the real impact that we make. And I think there, the social sciences and humanities, the social innovation, we need to advance so much on that. And within the funding that we have at the moment, we have tried to understand how anything that we are doing on technology has a social innovation component, which is very good, but we still need to go more deeper in understanding the social sciences and humanities and see how they can advance themselves to understand. Yeah.
Yes, building on that, thank you, because I love your way in which you frame the transdisciplinary in front of the inter and multi. I think it's the first time in a panel that someone just explained that, so congratulations. I would like to, in this direction, and building on that, and probably because we are talking about disparities and the starting point because of, as you mentioned, the investment, the initial investment is different. But again, I'm going to underline something that probably I'm not going to happy if I'm going to leave the panel without underlying. Data-driven economy. I think that we are not seeing, and probably is connected with this transdisciplinary perspective. Ron Boschna focused from the economy perspective as Regional Studies Association person like me, member, in the input. I believe that we need to start thinking clearly in the social impact and social innovation of this. And probably, we are talking about disparities of regions, countries, member states, and what about the geopolitics? Because we didn't mention China, we didn't mention the US. I was Fulbright 2 years ago, and it's funny, but because in the US, they are envy about our social economic model, and that we have regulations, for example, that allows cities, regions, civil society, business, and public sector to reshuffle data altruism and data donation. We have data available. This can be a way in which we can improve public services, but also competitiveness of SMEs or companies in itself. So probably I'm just focusing on that because I can see an opportunity, for instance, in the US, they are calling here to organize data cooperatives, something that, for example, in my area in the Basque country, and some others in Europe, but particularly, there are quite a lot of tradition on that. So don't forget that the strength of Europe is also the social model. And if we combine the social model with the data-driven economy, well, I'm not going to to finish the sentence. I think it's enough to think about that. But I would be, as you can see, much more positive at the beginning.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Maybe let me answer here. I'm fully with you. You are this one who will produce, and you will produce the jump, which Ron was saying that some regions, Extremadura, for example, need to get out of their structural trap. That's true. But what do you do with and this was my humble point, which I made at the beginning, if you have cities where 80% of all the processes and the data is still on paper, what will you do? So you can dream, so you need to do first put in the work and digitalize. That's what I meant. And it is not only, and you're coming from a privileged part of the world, but there are others which are lagging behind. It's also about understanding, because funding is there, but it's not used properly so often. So this is something where I think, and I'm the humble guy who's trying to lay the groundwork, and then the jumps and the excellence can come, I hope. So, but it needs hard work to do this before we really turn into a, how should I say, data-driven, social innovative Europe, with, in particular, in the beautiful places of Europe.
Just a comment. I agree with your point, with your realistic, let's say, update. But once that you were talking, I had in mind, we tried to submit the paper 3 times. The 3 times they were rejected. I'm not the main author. With some, my colleagues from Tallinn Technological University. They are expert in residency program. The paper is this about, sorry, but the digitalization, that, I mean, was not even necessary for the residence program, and it's at the moment one of the leading programs from digital nomads worldwide. So again, and this is a European invention, like some others. I knew last day that Prepsi was from here, Skype was from here. I mean, we have some small cases. So yes, but probably we are a little bit advanced on moving from the analogic society to the digital. I think that we are already data-driven, because AI is reshuffling existing data. OpenAI is reshuffling our data these days. So, well.
Very difficult questions. Yeah. Okay. But I just noted to myself 3 very important issues. The capacity, what we need, and the capacity on administrative manner, and also in transdisciplinarity. Also the cooperation, and the time that these processes and development takes time. And by the way, we have just running out time. So I would like to thank you for your really valuable inputs, and I would like to ask the audience to continue the debate with you. And thank you for your presence, and thank you for your talks.